Resuming debate, the honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honoured to be here to speak on S-203, the Federal Framework on Autism Spectrum Disorder. But before I speak about this really important bill, I just want to recognize that today is my grandson's birthday. I just want to wish him a very happy birthday, dude. I wish I was with you. As so many of us in this place know, we miss a lot of important days, and it's a hard one for me to miss his birthday today. So I just wanted to wish him all the best. Thank you. So I first of all just want to say a big thank you to the member from Edmonton, Wetaskiwin. I know about his advocacy. I've certainly seen this bill in this place before, and I hope that we finally get it through that passing line that is so, so important. And I think the basis of this is really about how do we look at this whole country and make sure that everyone feels like they belong. And, you know, one of the things that's very clear, and it is a challenge in a country as big as ours, is often different provinces and different territories have different services. And it doesn't always meet the need. And so it's really important that when we look at this framework, we understand that by bringing everyone together, what we want to see is the best supports in place for those living with autism spectrum disorder and for those who love them the most. And I think that whenever we come into this place and one of our fellow members has brought their human experience, their lived experience to this place and said, here's a way, as a person who has lived through these realities, here's a way that we can make life better for everyone. That we should all pay attention, we should all listen and make sure that when we speak on this issue, we speak in a collective voice, and I certainly hope that that's what happens. So this really talks about having a national framework, making sure that there's a timely and equitable process for people to access screening and diagnosis so that they are able to access the supports that are there. It is also so much about providing good financial supports. We know that often folks living within this group have challenges, there's extra needs. We want to make sure that people have the supports that they need to do this well, and support for caregivers. There is nothing worse, Madam Speaker, than seeing people that are working so hard, they're giving all of that care, and they burn out because we don't have the proper supports in place for them. And we don't want to see that happening. We want there to be success where there should be success. It also talks about having meaningful research and the resources there to provide that research so that, again, those services are there, so that our communities are doing better, and so that we can provide an adequate service, community connection, so that people can succeed. You know, I often think about this. I think about how is it that we can pay attention to what's happening to all of the people in our communities so that no one gets left behind, so that we actually take the time to notice where those blocks are and remove those blocks so that we can have that wholesome support. And public education is a part of this framework, and I think that's incredibly important because it is only with educating that we draw so much more awareness, allow people to hold this information, and it creates an environment of curiosity. And I think that's really important. I can't say enough for my perspective about how much we need to have curiosity so that when somebody is a little bit different than us, instead of us being afraid, we really open doors, ask questions, and learn how we can work with people in a more meaningful and profound way. And what we know based on so much research is that people in our communities have been left behind. And it's shameful that in our places, in this country, that when people are left behind, things fall apart. And that really worries me. You know, I always think of Maya Angelou, who is a great hero of mine, and she used to say, when we know better, we do better. So this is why public education is important, because hopefully the more we know, the more opportunity we can see, the more doors that can be open, and the more inclusive our communities will become. We also know that if there is a co-occurring condition, that it is even harder for families to be successful, and there's complexity and challenges added. So we need to be addressing that, and that's why I think this framework is so important, because it brings people to the table to talk about that, to talk about co-occurring conditions and what that means going on to the future. If we're going to provide and build communities that we can be proud of, a country that we can be proud of, we really need to make sure that that is done. So we know that resource around knowledge, around research is desperately needed. And we also know that rural and remote communities often are challenged to provide the services. And this is a big concern for me. I know for myself, representing a rural and remote community, all too often the services that are desperately needed across the board are just not there. And the people that are trying to provide those services are doing their very best. But often when we look at service delivery, we forget that broad areas with lots of travel for service providers becomes very, very challenging. And asking families to take their families to travel big distance is another challenge. So we need to be looking at this. This is really important. And I know I've spoken to people in my riding that deliver services, that work with families, and they talk about this repeatedly. They need more time. They need the right services in place. We need to find pathways so we're not sending families far, far away from home to get their help, because it just adds another burden. It's harder to get ahead. It's harder to do the everyday things of life. It's harder to maintain employment sometimes because of the high needs and care that are required. So I really hope that when we look at this framework, we're really attentive to making sure that the needs that are out there are supported regardless of if you live in a more urban center or in a more rural center. And I think, one of the things that's so important about this bill as well is it talks about that coordinated effort, bringing all levels of government together, making sure that we're not seeing overlap, and where there are gaps, identifying them and finding the resources to fill those gaps. So this is so important. So I'm grateful to be here to speak on this bill. And in closing, I just want to say, the most important part for me, and I think we're almost there in this bill, is nothing without us when it's about us. So I need to be very clear that that's something that the NDP will be making sure, because what we don't want to see happen is a framework that's put into place where people who are not living this every day, who are not supporting it every day, are having more of a say than those who are experiencing it. So Madam Speaker, I just want to say that the NDP will be supporting this bill. I look forward to seeing it finally getting through this place and out into this country so that we can see better supports and identify those key challenges so that we can build a better Canada for everyone. Thank you.
Resuming debate.